Okay, I'm going to talk through some of these practice problems. That while you study for your next version of the skills test, if you're struggling with any of these, you can. On this first one, since it is division, you're going to have to go through and actually flip just this second fraction, because dividing by a fraction is the same as multiplying by the reciprocal. You can do that just as you factor it, or you can do it from the very beginning, but it's very important to remember that that will flip. On number 2 over here, it won't end up flipping because it started as multiplication, and so it will just stay as is. I'm going to flip it as I factor, so I'm going to go ahead and do that first. This top numerator of the first fraction isn't going to factor at all, so that just stays the same. The denominator here has a GCF. I can take a 10k squared out of both parts, and it leaves me with that k plus 9. Now I'm going to go ahead and factor the denominator of the second one, because that's going to go on top of my second fraction. I can take a 20k squared out, and that leaves me with a k minus 5. Now I'm going to factor this numerator, because again it goes on the denominator of it once I flip it. I can originally pull out a 2, so I'm going to go ahead and do that first. And now I'm still left with a trinomial, so I need to figure out how I multiply to 50 and add to negative 15. Well, that's going to be negative 5 and negative 10. If you need help with that factoring, I'm going to go ahead and write that out. I would write this out as k squared minus 5k minus 10k plus 50. And then we split it down the middle and factor by grouping. From the first half, you can pull out a k, and from the second, you can pull out a negative 10. Which will leave me with, I need the 2 from the GCF still, and then I have a k minus 10, and I have a k minus 5. Now your job is to go through and cancel out anything that can. So for example, the k minus 5s can cancel, the k squareds can cancel, and I can even do, say, this 20 divided by 10, which is just going to give me 2. The other thing with that, I have is 2 in the denominator, so those 2's can even really cancel also. What you're left with then is k minus 4 over k plus 9 times k minus 10. This can't simplify anymore. That's done. When you're taking these first ones on the quiz, something will simplify. This is the main part I'm checking that you know how to simplify, is that number 1 on the quiz. Number 2 is similar to what number 1 will be like on the quiz also. So if you need extra practice, it's there. But something should simplify. So if it doesn't, double check your factoring and make sure you're good to go. 3 and 4 on this practice sheet are both just adding and subtracting, which you'll approach the same way. So I'll work out one of them. One thing I would always suggest in your denominator is to look at it and see if you can factor either piece. So like here, I can pull a 3 out of this. If I was doing the second one, I could pull a 3 out as well. I do that to make it easier to see what my common factors are. We're looking at number 3 here. I have a common factor of 3 in both. So now this first fraction just needs an x plus 4 on top and bottom. When I do that, I am going to distribute the top. It's going to be 4x plus 16. The denominator is this 3 times x plus 4. It does not cancel. It is still there. And then I can really put this other part on top also. The negative is going to distribute, so it's going to be minus x plus 3. But the minute I have a common denominator, I only have to write it once. And so I can put it all together in one fraction. Then my job is really just to simplify. So 4x minus x is 3x. 16 plus 3 is 19, all over 3 times x plus 4. I can't factor that numerator, and I am done. Just to give you a hint on the second one, for my GCF, this first fraction really needs the 2a plus 3 on top and bottom. The second fraction needs just this factor of a. So the second one is a little more difficult. There are other ways to do it. Remember, you can always multiply both denominators by the other denominator. That will sometimes get more complicated, but that will work. Just make sure whatever you multiply the denominator by to make them match, you also have to multiply the numerator. 5 and 6 here are your complex fractions, so it's similar to what number 3 will look like on your quiz. With these, you need to make sure you get a common denominator on all of your fractions that you have. So here I have 3, and I have a denominator of 4, 4, and x, so I need the ones with 4s to also have an x attached to it. And I need the one with an x to have a 4. And then I'm going to do all of that multiplication. Again, it has to be all of your fractions that match in the denominator. Don't just multiply a couple of them. But then what I can do is multiply the top and bottom of my big fraction by that 4x, and it will all cancel. I cannot factor anything here. You cannot cross off these x cubes because there's this addition. So this just is my final answer. One hint on number 6, make sure this 4 is really a 4 over 1. And then your common denominator you're going to try to get is a 36. So you're going to multiply by 9 on that fraction, by 4 on your other fraction, and then the numerator you're going to multiply by that whole 36. 7 and 8 are going to look like the last problem on your skills test. When you start these ones, remember you also want to get a common denominator. If it looks like number 7 does here, it looks more complicated, but it's really not going to be. You want to start by trying to factor any of the denominators you can. So here on number 6 I can. These two match the first one and the last one, so I'm just going to focus on factoring one of them, and I know the other one will be the same. I can start with a GCF of 2. And then I'm going to try to factor. I know I'm multiplying to 30 and adding to 17, which is going to be 15 and 2. Writing it all the way out, I'll use this space for right now and then erase it in a minute. And then I'm going to draw my line down the middle and factor by grouping. And so this denominator here, for both of them really, is going to be 2 times 3n plus 2 times n plus 5. So my first goal is to get all of that to match. The first and the last one do match. The second one has the n plus 5, but it needs both the 2 and the 3n plus 2. So I'm going to multiply that on top and bottom. This next step can be a lot of writing, but it's important to know what's happening here. So I'm going to write out everything I have so that you can see. With this, I now can multiply both sides of the equation by 2 times 3n plus 2 times n plus 5. And what that does is it cancels every single denominator. So you don't want to simplify anything before getting to that point, because then it won't all cancel as nicely. And now I am just left with my numerators. And I get 6n plus 5 equals 5. And you have n equals 0 when you subtract that 5 and then divide both sides by 6. You do need to check this against your excluded values because there is a chance that will be an issue for you. For your excluded values, look at your denominators and set them equal to 0. So the 3n plus 2 equals 0 gives me that n cannot be negative 2/3. The n plus 5 equals 0 gives me n cannot be negative 5. The 2 equals 0 doesn't give me anything because there's no variable there. And really all you're checking is the answer you got the same as an excluded value. In this case it's not, so n equals 0 is my answer. If it was, you would just have to cross it out and tell me no solution.